All right, so this is our team. If you've had any involvement with our team before, you may recognize some of us here. But a little bit about me. So my name is Aleshia. I'm a mum of two. Yeah, just a big food nerd, really. Studied food and nutrition and health related things at uni for a very long time. Developed some recipes, and I've written a little bit about my experiences with feeding my own two kids that you see on your screen when they were babies. It was not straightforward. I had a really tough time of it, which I think has given me, yeah, just passion to want to make it a bit more simple and, straightforward for others and help you to feel supported in your own infant feeding. Okay, so my aim with these talks is I will give you all of the information that you ask for to the best of my ability and knowledge, but I will let you make your own decisions about how it is that you feed your babies. I don't believe in a one size fits all approach because we all come from different cultures. We have different beliefs, values, attitudes towards food, and we all have different budgets around food as well. So if you have $40 a week for food, that is a very different pantry to if you have $400 a week for food. All of these things influence how we feed our babies. So it can't be one size fits all. My aim's really just to help you to, help these Ministry of Health guidelines fit into your life and how, you want to do things for your family. So this is a totally safe and judgment-free zone. Ask us all about infant feeding. Any question you have, this is the place to ask it. Here's a bit about what we'll talk about today. Now, we all eat food, so we've all got opinions on it. And how we feed our babies is a really emotive topic. People get fired up about infant feeding and starting solids. So I would love for anyone who's keen to either come off mute or to use the chat just for this next bit. How do you feel about this statement? You might have seen it floating around online. Food under one is just for fun. Does anyone have any how do you feel about it? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you somewhere in the middle? We've got agree, yep. Cool. Just have a little think about that one to yourself. It's something that you might see floating around. And if you drop this sentence into any of those kind of mum Facebook groups, you'll start a war. I've put it up there on purpose because there's so many different ways to interpret that and to look at it. And then we've got, I believe the babies need the food and iron. Yep. So lots of different ways to kind of look at that statement, hey? But have another think about it at the end and see what you think. Okay, so any of these little characters that you see that are drawn like cartoons, that is the Ministry of Health infant feeding guidelines. So that's a direct snip. This is what the page looks like. And in one of the first few pages of the guidelines, it just tells us that how we feed our babies does have an impact on their short and long-term health outcomes. So how we feed our babies does affect them, now through to childhood, teenagehood, and even into their adult years. Now, that's not meant to pressure anyone. As a mum myself, I know that there's too much pressure as there is with mum, with mum life. But it's just to show you that, it is worthwhile kind of getting the information knowledge which you're doing now. Basically, if you're feeding your baby most of the time with foods such as veggies, some fruit, iron-rich foods, legumes, things like that, then that's what you need to do for better health outcomes. So less of the, less of the packet food, more of the real food for better health outcomes most of the time. It's like what Dr. Libby says, it's what we do most of the time that impacts our health, not what we do some of the time. So by all means, if you want to have that first birthday cake smash and the cake has some sugar in it, go for it. That's food is also a pleasure in life, but just creating those really good habits now. Okay. First of all, we'll talk about why starting solids is important. This is one of our beautiful Rito Ora babies on your screen. And just look at how much fun she is having. Her food is all over her face, it's down her shirt, it's probably on the floor. And that's exactly what we want to see. This is what Instagram should show, right? Not those perfect houses. Okay, so in the short term, like right now, that kind of 6 to 12-month developmental window, babies are learning about the world of food in the way that babies learn best, and that is through play. So what are our babies learning about? They're learning about all the different senses. The European perspective is we have 5 senses: touch, touch, smell, taste. There's sight. Well, there's another one. We can hear things, right? And so instead of paying for those really expensive baby sensory classes, when you start solids, this is a sensory experience for your baby. So baby needs to learn about what food feels like through playing with it. They will reach out, they will squash the food, rub it all over their face. Sorry, I've just had someone in the chat just say that they can't hear me. Is your sound turned up? Okay, so if you know, squash a mandarin or an orange and you have the juice drip down your arm, that's touch, that's texture. Food can be soft, it can be hard, it can be crunchy. If you cut open a banana, that feels really slimy, right? Kiwi fruit can feel fuzzy. And babies are learning about all of these textures through touching the food. So we really do recommend letting your baby explore the food with their hands. We know that it can help to reduce fussy eating in the long run if we let our babies play with the food now, because they're learning. So it's not naughty, it's actually really, really good. It's really, when you're letting your baby do messy introduction of solids, which is what we recommend, it's about just managing the mess as well. So having a long sleeve bib on, making sure you're not wearing, your favorite Jamie Kay outfit, putting something underneath where your baby feeds. So, $2 shop shower curtain or a splash mat, a couple of squares of plastic from Spotlight. When you're choosing your high chair, it can feel a bit overwhelming, but what I would recommend is really find one that you can wipe down. So that's because you're going to be using it so often and starting solids looks like a big mess. So one that you can clean is probably a priority. So baby's also learning about smell. If you overthink it a little bit, there's lots of different smells to food. And our brain knows exactly what a food tastes like because of the smell, right? But babies are having to learn all of that. And so smell is also involved in our digestion. As soon as smell hits our nose, that tells our brain, hey, there's food around, and it makes us produce saliva. It makes our digestion, enzymes in our digestive tract start going, it gets the body ready for food before we've even started eating it. So smell is really important, and I've put fish on your screen on purpose because fish is either an aroma, so like a nice smell, or an odor, a gross smell, depending on what you personally think of fish. Smell is individual to all of us as well. There's also taste. So babies are developing their taste preferences. I've put this 1-year-old on your screen because it was a surprise to her mum that she really enjoyed eating lemons. So there's no such thing as kid food and adult food, right? It's all just food. Let your baby surprise you with what tastes they like. Do you have a question, Baljet? I'll just pop you on mute. Okay. Babies are also learning about different temperatures of food. It can be breast milk or formula is generally warm. And then if we give them something that's cold out of the fridge, that's a new experience for babies. So we know that it takes between, 12 to 15 tries of they like the taste of it. If you've given your baby something like kiwi fruit, just say, and you think, oh, baby doesn't like that, it's not that they don't like the taste. Maybe they just need more practice with that smell or with that texture before they're going to eat it. So give the same food over and over and over again. It's that repetition that is key. And there's been some really cool studies out that have shown us that if we are smiling, if the parent is smiling at the food while the baby's eating it, then the babies are more likely to enjoy the food because they're watching our faces. They watch how to be human by observing us, which is scary, but they're watching our faces and they're trying to figure out, hey, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And so if we're smiling at the food, and we'll feel really dorky while we're smiling at, a bowl of vegetables, but babies will have more of a positive experience. And that's what we're aiming for, positive, calm repetition. So allow for the mess and the same food over and over and over again, and you're off to a great start. So start the way you want to continue. If you want a vegetable eater, feed your baby vegetables every single day. Here's a little fun fact about baby actually gets their first taste of food in pregnancy. In pregnancy, the amniotic fluid that baby is in will change taste according to what the pregnant person is eating. Or baby can kind of detect some flavors. And then if you could breastfeed, then the breast milk actually does, baby can pick up on taste through the breast milk. And so the idea is that when you start giving solid foods, your baby's already expecting your normal family foods. So we do recommend feeding your normal family foods when you start solids, just in an age-appropriate way. So if your family eats meat and 3 veg, if your family eats pasta, curry, stir fry, whatever your normal food is, start with that because that's what your baby's taste buds are already expecting. Okay, we'll move on to, how we feed our babies now does impact the rest of their life. So if you break it down to like some good habits, if we feed our babies, a lot of veggies and a good balanced diet, then we know that babies will have a less chance of, becoming obese or diabetic. Um, Also, we're wanting to look after babies' gut health. So what our gut health is as humans, we are made up of more bacteria in terms of cell number than we are human cells. So we are bacterial organisms more than we are humans. Crazy, crazy. And there's bacteria and then other things like fungi and stuff that live in our guts and our tummies. And depending on what type of bacteria and stuff you have in your gut, it has a big impact on your overall health or well-being. So gut health is linked to things like mental health, it's linked to obesity, diabetes, allergies, eczema, asthma, hay fever. Gut health is also linked to, our energy levels. And there's some correlation, I don't know about causation, but there's some correlation between gut health and severity of ADHD or autism symptoms. So our gut health is important not just for our physical being, but our mind and body. How to get good gut health, and this is good to know for for our babies and our tamariki, but also for ourselves, is that the good bacteria who, do good things in our bodies, they live on high fiber food. So every time you're eating that cauliflower, you are feeding your good bacteria and they grow and you make more of them. And that's what a prebiotic is. So lots of high fiber foods feeding your good bacteria. Now, the bad bacteria that lives in our gut, you might have heard of something like Candida. It's probably the most famous one of all. But bad gut health comes from things like sugar and empty carbohydrates. So, things like cake, for example, fine to have every now and then, but not to have really, really often. It's more kind of when you hit the toddler food market, if you just buy packet food from the supermarket, that you seem to get more sugar and empty carbohydrates, but there is a little bit of it in the baby section. So, most of the time, if we're feeding high fiber foods, that's what we need to do for better gut health. I'm often asked about probiotics when I do these talks. I just want you to think really critically if you do think that a probiotic is right for you. What a probiotic is, first of all, is it's a few, maybe one or a few strains of bacteria. There are trillions, so not just millions or billions, but trillions of strains of bacteria. When we're buying a probiotic, what we're doing is we're buying, just a few out of a trillion. And they all do different things for us. So just think really critically if you are buying them about what strain you want to buy. How do you know that your baby doesn't already have it? And what do you want it to do for you? Okay, so speak to someone like a dietitian, a nutritionist, a really good GP to speak about the right kind of probiotic. There are a few that we know of in our service. So perhaps if baby was born via C-section or has had antibiotics and you wanted to talk about probiotics, then get in touch with our service. We'd be happy to share what we know so far. But I couldn't tell you about the different, 1 trillion different kinds. I can definitely tell you about 5. Now, focusing on those prebiotic food though, so keep it really simple, just lots of high fiber foods. So this is something that looks like a lot, but really the point of it is what I have circled in purple. It's showing us that in pregnancy, baby has gut health. It's not totally sterile. There is bacteria in there. And then when your baby's born, baby's gut health changes. As soon as we start solid foods, so even just a taste, we are changing our baby's gut health. So this is changes that we can't see on the outside that we're making to our babies when we start solid foods. And then into childhood. And then so different diets result in different gut health. You can see at the top here is, traditional kind of foods like plant-based diets, maybe with a bit of meat. And then Western foods, so processed foods, will result in not ideal and just different gut health. So it is important what we're feeding to our babies and ourselves. Okay, so the next topic, and then please feel free to either pop your questions in chat or ask them at the end when we turn the recording off. Now, start solids around 6 months. The next slide will show you exactly what you're looking for your baby. I think it's the word around that has caused a bit of controversy. Basically, we're not necessarily looking for when your baby is 180 days old to start solid foods. It's about looking at your individual baby's signs of readiness, like is their body strong enough, mature enough to start taking in solid foods. Other reasons why we start at around 6 months is some of our 6-month-old babies are really active and they use a lot of energy. At 6 months, I have seen some babies crawling, crazy. Some of them are rolling across the room, others are all arms and legs, and they're just having a party nonstop. So those babies might need a bit more energy than just that of breast milk or formula. But what's also normal is some babies are happy just to sit and chill in your lap. They're not so active, but it's just showing that different babies have different energy needs, like adults, right? Also, the iron stores that your baby's born with start to drop off at around 6 months. The other thing that we can't see on the outside, but is happening on the inside, is that baby's digestive system needs to be mature enough. There needs to be certain enzymes that have developed or little valves that need to close off and just things like that inside your baby's puku, inside your baby's tummy, that show us that they'll be ready for solid foods. So we know that starting at around 6 months means that your baby's body will be strong enough for that. So this is what it looks like to show us when your baby might be ready to start solid foods. So when they can hold their head up, that's good. If your baby's still chin to chest, like that neck's not very strong, we would not start that baby on solid foods. if they can sit with much less help as well. So you see this baby sitting pretty well here. If they make chewing movements with their mouth, if they open their mouth when the spoon touches it. And then if you do put food inside your baby's mouth and they can hold the food in their mouth, that's a good sign as well that your baby might be ready to start solids. If your baby's not ready, you'll see their tongue will push the food out. They call it a tongue thrust reflex. So if your baby's pushing the food out with their tongue, maybe pack it up and try again a week later. Now, showing an interest in food is one that we are looking for, but the next drawing I think illustrates it really well. This is by Amy Brown. If you're interested in more reading, she's got lots of great stuff that you can Google, books that you can buy of hers. But anyway, baby watching us eat is something that's actually called the infant gaze. When a person is interested in something, we watch it intently. We notice it. And that's how babies learn about feeding. But just because they're watching us eat doesn't mean that that's the only sign you're looking for and that they're ready. Babies watch everything that we do, don't they? So, our babies watch us drive, they watch us use a sharp knife. I mean, they might watch you drink a wine. And so that doesn't mean that they're ready for all that stuff. They're just interested in it. So if your baby's only watching you eat, but does not have these other signs as well, then that baby's probably not ready. If that's the case for your baby, then you can give your baby like silicone spoons to play with or something like that just at the table until baby's ready to start solids. Okay, here's a little bit about how to start and we'll go over food choice. So it is recommended from the Ministry of Health to start with puree once your baby is developmentally ready and then move on to finger food at about 7 to 8 months. So we're not on puree for a really, really long time. It's just a little while. But I'll go into more detail about that shortly. So this is a no list of drinks that you see on your screen. That's a copy from the Ministry of Health guidelines. What they did is they kind of went around and asked people, what are you feeding your babies? And anything that had salt or sugar on it made the no list. So at its core, the no list of foods, which is quite long, are all just foods with salt and sugar. For example, hot chips or ice cream. Those foods are not recommended for your baby. They really don't need them. You might be wondering why no alcohol made the list, and that's because some people might still put whiskey on the dummy, that very old school kind of thing. We don't recommend doing that. Sometimes tea and coffee can be customary in some cultures. So at the end of dinner, everyone in the family, including the baby, will have a little cup of coffee. We don't recommend that in New Zealand. But yeah, so juice is not recommended either. So or rather give the whole fruit, not the juice. The yes list is much more exciting to me. So mostly veggies, some fruit, iron-rich foods. And then we'll go into the foods that contain like gluten and wheat and dairy and things towards the end of this. That recommendation to eat fruit and veggies starts as soon as you start solid foods. So you might have heard it with adults with the old 5+ a day. So there is recommendations for babies. So a couple of pieces of fruit, a couple of pieces of veg once you get up to about 9 months, but at least some veg every day. And it doesn't have to be a large amount. This is too much that you see on your screen. But, one little round of cucumber counts as a serving. Okay. I don't go into recipes a lot in this talk, but that is only because there are so many different dietary preferences and requirements from family to family. But I like the idea of this recipe, so I'll just share this one. And if you'd like links to more recipes, then just let me know and I can send you an email. But what this is it's a vegetable and a legume. So a legume is anything that's in a pod like chickpeas, red kidney beans, lentils, cannellini beans. They have a bit of protein, a bit of iron, a bit of fiber. So they're good for gut health, good for babies' iron stores, lots of things. If you blend up legumes are also cheap, right? You can get them for between $1 and $2 a tin. So if you blend up legumes with some veggies, you've got a good puree right there. Now, here is something just wanting to acknowledge the cost of living crisis and how going to the grocery store is just outrageously expensive now. So I talk to mums that I've seen in my line of work about how they're prioritizing veggies, and I've done a bit of reading and stuff around this. So this is what we've come up with. If you've got more ways of how you're managing to prioritize veggies, just help us all out and pop it in the chat too. So often perishable foods can be a concern. So perishable foods are things that can rot. Sometimes our good intentions start rotting in the bottom of that fruit basket or in the vegetable bin. So what is actually happening at the moment is people are avoiding buying them. So say they won't buy bananas or kiwi fruit because it might rot. So if you are concerned about that, I would recommend still buying those perishable foods, but chopping them up and freezing them. Frozen and tinned foods are just as nutritious as fresh. So sometimes, this was done last year, I think things are slightly cheaper this year, but sometimes, for example, the spinach was so much cheaper in the frozen section than it was, in the fresh section last year. Same with cauliflower and broccoli. So have a little look around. Even have a look if your supermarket does have an online section. Have a look there before you go into the shop so you know where you're going. Shop seasonally, reduce food waste. Things like that broccoli stem can be grated up and thrown into foods, thrown into kind of fritters or anything like that. There's a really great website called Love Food, Hate Waste, and they do a lot around food waste. It's estimated that New Zealanders waste between $500 and $1,000 worth of food every year. I think it's every year. And so they've just got some cool ideas on how to make the most of the food that you are buying. Sometimes going to the market can be so much cheaper. The Mangere markets are great. If you're in Franklin, the Pukekohe markets are really, really good as well. I've had some mums say that the wonky box has been good for them. I've not tried it, so I can't give direct feedback, but they've told me that it's how they're prioritizing veggies. And if possible, try planting a garden. Even just one pot and some veggie seeds are enough to get a garden started. If you plant something like spinach or kale, when you cut it, it keeps growing back. So plant that garden once and it might last you 4 months. And it also is a way to get organic food into babies that hasn't been sprayed. So if you would like to access some garden seeds, you can come see myself, and I think Rosie and Rebecca will be there too at Westfield Manukau on Wednesday next week. We'll be joining them for a Matariki celebration. So come and say hi, and we've got some veggie seeds to hand out to people. And then we've got in the chat, thanks Emily, you can buy a bag of fruit and veggies from the Beautification Trust in Manurewa on a Thursday for $15. How good is that? $15. So if you're local to Manurewa, look that one up too. I think I will be too. Thanks, Emily. Okay, so here is where I'll hand to Rosie and Rebecca, and they will have some good kōrero with you about iron-rich foods.
Awesome. So as Aleshia said, we're going to be talking about iron for a little bit. So just starting off, what is iron? Iron is a mineral that your body needs for growth and development, and it is primarily used to create red blood cells which carry oxygen around our body. So we all need it. And so in babies, iron is very essential for setting up some of the functions that you can see on the screen. So brain development, setting up their immune system and giving them energy. And what happens is during your pregnancy, in your last 10 weeks of pregnancy specifically, you're setting up your iron stores for your baby that your baby will use from when they are born to when they are 6 months old. Yeah, so you probably would have heard during your pregnancy that you had a higher requirement for iron, and that is why, because you're setting up you're maintaining your own iron levels, and you're also setting up iron levels for your baby for the first 6 months of life. So you would have needed more iron, and your baby will need more iron when they're starting solid food. So you can see that on the screen, that at 7 months, your baby needs more iron than their dad. Yeah, cool. Next slide. So who is at risk of iron deficiency? Mainly it's to do with babies that didn't get that last 10 weeks of gestation. So preterm infants just didn't have that last setting up and establishment of their iron stores for those first 6 months. So they are at risk. And also if mum was deficient during pregnancy, if mum didn't have enough iron for herself, she's probably not going to have enough iron for baby. Low birth weights and also delayed starting in iron-rich foods, which we'll talk about, are also risk factors. So if you think your baby's at risk, consulting with a medical practitioner is important. Okay, so what are the signs of iron deficiency? What should you look out for in your infants? So it's mainly to do with what we were talking about before. So that brain development, that setting up of the immune system, and that energy. So you're going to notice if a baby doesn't have enough energy, they're going to be grumpy and irritable, tired, but also probably not sleeping very well. They'll probably be pale and cold, have a reduction in appetite and digestive problems. So if they're having any of these symptoms, yeah, talk to a professional. Cool.
Cool. So in our food, there are two sources of iron, really. So iron from animal foods is called heme iron, and iron from plant foods is called non-heme iron. That heme iron, which is found in the animal sources, is actually taken up by our bodies 10 times better than non-heme iron, which is found in those plant foods. So what this really means that is meat is the best source of iron for your baby if you do eat meat. And the redder the meat, the higher it will be in that heme iron. So this will mean that beef and lamb are higher in iron than pork or chicken and fish. If you don't eat meat, that's totally okay. There are still those plant-based non-heme foods, which are good iron sources, but they're just not absorbed as effectively. And some examples of this could be whole grains, iron-fortified breads and cereals, so that's when iron's added to the food. Legumes, so kidney beans, baked beans, chickpeas, lentils, and those fermented soy products such as tofu.
Yeah, you probably would have heard that like spinach has super high iron, and that's one of the things, like dark leafy green vegetables. In terms of their structure, they have high iron, but how much we can actually take up in our bodies, we don't take up very much from them. So yeah, those red meat sources are the ones that we take the most from.
Yeah,
cool.
Totally.
So then, yeah, do you want to speak to?
You can speak to that one, I think.
Okay, so what I was saying before about taking up those nutrients, there's this concept called bioavailability, which is a bit complicated, but what it really means is that it's how much of a nutrient when we eat it we actually take up. So if you had 30 grams of iron containing food, or you had 30 grams of iron, it might have a bioavailability of 5%. So then you're only taking 5% of that 30 into your body. And with those red meat products, especially like beef and lamb, you're getting 30 to 35% bioavailability. You're taking up a bigger percentage of that iron from that source. But if you are a vegan and vegetarian for whatever reason, you can still get enough iron for your baby. It's definitely possible. You just have to work a little bit harder. So red meat is going to be like the easiest way to get in that iron, whereas like vegetarian, vegan sources, definitely possible. You just have to work harder for it. So yeah, we've got on the screen, we have a few fortified cereals. So these are fortified with iron and appropriate for your baby starting solids. And these brands are not super important. So anything that is made for babies and has iron in it is appropriate. And you can just mix that with your breast milk. Yeah. Did you want to?
Yeah, and so in terms of if you are vegetarian or vegan, so that's fine. Again, you just have to work a little bit harder. So eating more of those non-heme plant foods is a good way to try and get more iron in. And then also what you can do is vitamin C actually helps you absorb that iron from foods. So if you're eating some tofu and maybe giving baby a little bit of orange or something to go with it, or some capsicum or tomato. They're all really high in vitamin C, so that can help baby absorb the iron from those plant-based foods. Yeah, as we've talked about, fortified cereals and actually cooking with a cast iron pan. If you're cooking a meal, that can also help get some iron into your food, which is one I always forget about, but it's also really important. And yeah, the beans. Do you want to talk on the beans?
Yeah. So when we can beans, legumes, chickpeas, all those types of things, the canning process removes it's like very fancy term, it's called a phytate. It's just kind of like this bond that occurs in plant foods, like a structural bond. And it's in all of our beans and vegetables and things like that. And with those phytates, they can sometimes reduce absorption of iron. And so during the canning process, those phytates are broken down. So if you are consuming beans and lentils, a really easy tip is just to consume them from a can, wash off the excess liquid, because the iron in there is going to be easier for your body to absorb, more bioavailable.
Yeah. So just having those canned beans instead of, we can get dried beans if that's available for you. I think the dried beans are a little bit cheaper, but yeah, those canned beans are really good source of iron. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So as we talked about, picking those red meat products if you do eat those foods first, and pureeing them, because yeah, babies are not going to be eating a big steak. And I think you'll probably talk about pureeing on the next slide, Aleshia. But yes, if it's other food sources, consuming it with vitamin C, and those fortified cereals if you're a bit worried about, or they're just a great option in general, the fortified cereals.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we'll have a little korero about food choice. So the Ministry of Health recommendations were updated in 2021, and what the newer recommendations are is that there's no longer a need to stage food. So we don't need to stay on one type of food for 3 to 5 days and then introduce the next and then introduce the next, because we know that actually that can increase the risk of developing food allergy, because we want to be exposing our baby to lots of different foods to reduce the risk of allergy. So on day one, you can live on the wild side and you can put two things together. You can mix like pumpkin and avocado together, and that would be absolutely fine. We don't need to stay on one food for too long. Also, by offering more different types of food, we're actually increasing the amount of nutrition that your baby can get, because if you just offered carrots and then you just offered orange, that's different to if you can offer carrot and avocado and a bit of spinach. All these different things will equal better nutrition. Also, we know that when we are, not staging the food, we actually naturally move faster through from puree to mashed foods to finger foods, which is great for our speech development. So what they recommend is doing a puree at around 6 months for 2 weeks, moving on to mashed lumpy foods at about 6.5 weeks. So it's only 2 weeks on those runny purees, isn't it? Mashed lumpy foods, and then finger foods from 7 to 8 months. We know that if babies are made to bite, chew, and swallow, that's a skill that they need to learn. And it's really good for their speech development because it uses all the muscles and everything in the kind of lower face, upper neck region. Also, biting, chewing, and swallowing there's almost like a window of opportunity where babies are really good at learning this. Well, thanks for the question. So if we teach our babies how to bite, chew, and swallow too late, then it's just harder for them to learn. I have worked with babies toddlers at about 14, 15 months who were never given food to bite and chew before. And it's really hard to teach them at 14 months. You go to give them, I tried to give this 14-month-old a strawberry, and I went to give it to her and she just opened her mouth and she had no idea that she needed to bite on it. And then trying to teach her to chew was also hard. So biting, chewing, and swallowing is something that we do recommend babies doing from 7 months onwards. 6.5, you want to count the mashed puree. So you can start pureeing meat. This is a question from the chat. Thanks, Pri. You can start pureeing meat. Yeah, and the first week is absolutely fine. So somewhere between 6 and 7 months, you can start giving meat. If you're looking for a really good resource that shows you how to give meat, Beef and Lamb New Zealand or recipes.co.nz has probably the best resource I've seen on meat and iron-rich foods. I'll pop that in the chat, recipes.co.nz. But Beef and Lamb New Zealand, and all of their work is updated within Ministry of Health guidelines too. So the information will be same, not different. I know that different again can be overwhelming, can't it? So all their work is same with the approach that we teach as well. Okay, so what it looks like on day 1 is to offer milk feeds, so breast milk or formula, and then to wait about 20 minutes, and then to offer the solid foods. Start with 1 meal a day. It doesn't really matter if you start with breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I think, in mum life, things are so busy and hectic, and sometimes we just have really overwhelming days. So do whatever's easy for you. If it's easier for you to do dinner, because that's when you have more people at home in the house with you, then do that. Whatever works. There's very little evidence anywhere that shows of the effects of food on sleep. So, feeding dinner is not going to interrupt baby sleep or make baby sleep. And wouldn't it be great if you could just feed your baby like a banana and they slept all night? It unfortunately doesn't work like that. So it doesn't matter what meal you introduce, but start with 1 a day. By the time your baby is 9 months old, you've moved up to 3 meals a day. So somewhere between 6, 7, 8, 9 months, you've gone from 1 meal to 2, 2 meals to 3. From about 8 to 9 months, that's when they recommend giving food before the milk. On day 1, it is recommended to, just offer half a teaspoon. That can count as an entire meal, and then slowly build that up. So watch your baby's, the next slide says it, right? Let your baby's appetite guide you. So if you've given your baby that half a teaspoon, but they look like they want more, they will show you with their body language. Their eyes will be really big. They'll be leaning forward, grabbing at the spoon. They're showing you, yes, please, I'd like some more. But if your baby is done or finished at half a teaspoon, again, they will show you with their body language, because they will close their mouth, they'll turn their head, they might even push the spoon away. They're clearly showing you, no, thank you, I've had enough. Both of those things are fine. Different babies will eat different amounts at the same age, so it's not one size fits all. And we recommend that kind of social inclusion that you're seeing on your screen. Have your baby around when you eat. It works really well to create that positive relationship with food. If your baby is around for your own meal time, so if you wanted to start with dinner, then you eat dinner at the same time as your baby, not at a different time. This is a screenshot of the Ministry of Health food recommendations for baby. So you're welcome to screenshot this, but like I say, I'll upload it to YouTube as well. Milk is there with an asterisk because we don't just give a glass of milk. It needs to be like cheese or yogurt or something like that. And I'll talk about introducing allergens shortly. We'll talk a bit about finger food. Now, baby-led weaning is currently not recommended by the Ministry of Health because in their point of view, there's not enough evidence to prove its safety. There has been research that's been done in New Zealand, but there's just not been enough participants taking part. The big one was done 8 years ago by Otago University called the Bliss Study. My now 8-year-old was a part of that study, so I've been following it really, really closely, but only I think 200 of us took part, so it's just not big enough. So there's a question direct in the chat, when can we give yogurt? You can give sugar-free yogurt from 6 months. A lot of people will wait till 7, but it is safe from 6 months. So what baby-led weaning is it's giving finger foods from the beginning. So no puree, and it's entirely baby-led. So it's offering soft finger foods where babies feed themselves. Now, I want to talk about finger foods in general. Starting finger foods at about 7 to 8 months is what is recommended. But we'd never give finger foods before 6 months. And we want to be making sure that our babies are showing those signs of readiness, like being able to sit up pretty well and things like that. This is an 8-month-old baby who came through to Rito Ora eating pancakes. His mum did, I think, flour, banana, and breast milk, made them into pancakes. And here he is feeding himself. So finger foods never help baby. Don't put the food in the mouth. It looks like what you see on your screen with babies feeding themselves, because we don't want to decide how much goes in baby's mouth. Your baby needs to figure that out themselves. The food should be soft, so you should be able to squish it with your fingers. Say, for example, a ripe avocado would be a nice place to start with finger foods, or roast veggies as well, I guess, for winter season that we're coming into. A good thing to know about is baby's gag reflex. You might have seen the gag reflex with breast or formula feeding as well, actually. But what it is everyone has a gag reflex, babies, children's, adults, and it is designed to move the food around your mouth. So what we do when we put food in our mouths is our tongue will push the food to the left, push it to the right, and if it starts to move from left to right towards the back of the mouth, we will gag. So it always make a noise with the gag reflex. It's like gag and spit it out. When you're feeding your babies, when you do see the gag reflex, if your baby gags and spits it out, just wait and watch, because they will pick that piece of food back up and give it another go. It's not that the food was unmanageable. That's not why they gagged. It's just that they're moving it around their mouths. We always supervise our babies around food, and the recommendation to supervise kids around food is until they're between ages of 4 to 6. Gagging is not the same as choking as well. Choking is completely silent. It's obstruction of the airway. It's not moving food around. Yeah, so it is recommended to let your baby develop those skills, biting, chewing, swallowing, managing the food themselves from 7 to 8 months and onwards. Okay, just to respect your time, I'll kind of buzz through this bit and we'll talk about allergies. So baby food marketing, what that is the baby food industry is huge. If you've been married, that wedding industry is huge and it makes so much money. The baby food industry is much the same. Advertising will create the want or need of a product. So when we are buying food for our babies, we are the target of baby food marketing, of big business wanting us to spend our money with them. This is a quick Google search of how to market food to mums. And they're just saying, if you use the right package. So the studies back this up, because with baby food, they only surveyed the mums, not the dads. But if the baby food comes in a good package that has a health claim on the front, if it says something like, I'm high in iron, I have lots of calcium, mums will walk straight past, straight past the broccoli, straight past the whole grain food, and they will pick up the package because it's told us to. We're 14 times more likely to pick up a package with a health claim on the front of it for our babies than if it doesn't have a health claim on the front. And wouldn't it be great if vegetables came with health claims on the front to help us to know to buy those for our babies? This is a report for infant feeding and marketing up until 2026, and it's just basically, I had to cut this because it was a little bit disrespectful in my opinion. It's saying first-time parents don't know what they're doing. They're going to be really easily influenced. So if you can win their trust and if you can get on their radar by sending them lots of emails, they'll buy from you. And there's even little buzzwords, like these were the buzzwords of a couple of years ago, probiotic, immune system support, organic. If you put that on the front of your package, you'll sell more to mums. So there's lots of little things just to be aware of when you are buying food for your bubba. But, like we said earlier, where possible, just family foods from the get-go. A little bit about pouches. First of all, this is my child on your screen with a pouch. So I'm not here to demonize them. I don't think that they're a bad thing. I just think that, you know, in this day and age when we're so busy, we do use them, but not to overuse them. They have a time and place, like if you go to a mum and baby group, or if you're going to the beach, you want a mess-free option, something like that, but not to rely upon them for a few reasons. If you think about what we talked about at the start, where babies are learning with all of with their senses about what does food look like, what does it feel like, what's the texture of that food. If we're just giving them all the pouches, then they don't get an opportunity to learn about different foods. And so that means that they're more likely to become fussy eaters in the long run as well. You're actually supposed to squeeze the pouch out into a bowl and spoon feed if you are going to use them as well. Not doing what my daughter here was doing and just sucking it up. When they just suck it up like this, they're not biting, chewing, and swallowing. And even like little things like babies need to develop dexterity in their fingers, which is just from picking up little objects. If they develop that in their fingers, then it's really good for them to learn how to, use a crayon when they're 3, use a pen when they're 5 or 7, or when you decide to do that. So it is, real food when possible, pouches when you need to, but not to overuse the pouches. Okay, so here's a little bit about allergies. What the Ministry of Health recommends is, we know that giving babies foods that are considered high-risk allergens, like you see on your screen, dairy, eggs, nuts, tree nuts. So peanuts and tree nuts, like almonds, are 2 different things. You need to give both. Soy, gluten, wheat, fish. We need to be giving those foods to baby before they're 1 year old. Give the foods early, so from the time you start solids, and definitely before the first birthday. Once you've given these foods, keep giving them. So just to give the food like dairy or nuts once is not enough. Do it again and again and again. It's this exposure, or giving these high-risk allergens on repeat over and over again, that is going to help to protect your baby from developing a food allergy. Of course, if your baby does have a reaction, that's when you need to avoid and seek help. But we know that giving these foods to babies is the best thing you can do to reduce their risk of developing food allergies. I'll pop a little website in the chat for anyone who is keen. There's nip allergies in the bub.com.au. Australia's been doing this approach for longer than we have. They've had some great results. There's been a study as well, which just blew me away. They took a bunch of babies that were deemed high risk to have a peanut allergy, and they gave them small amounts of peanuts from the time they started solids up until the first birthday. And in this group of babies, they reduced the number of babies who developed a peanut allergy by 80%. 80% is huge. It's so significant. So it shows us that this exposure is really, really good for babies, and we need to be making sure that they do have these foods in their diet. This is a snip from the Ministry of Health guidelines as well. This is, you're welcome to screenshot this, or we can send you this afterwards. This is what it looks like if your baby's having a mild to moderate reaction. Itchy mouth or throat, I want to quickly talk about, because our babies don't have the vocabulary. They can't tell us that their mouth or throat is itchy, but what they will do is they will scratch on the outside. So that's how they're telling you. Vomiting and diarrhea are difficult because you can get vomiting or diarrhea from many different things. So definitely seek medical advice if you're worried about any of this. Anaphylaxis. There's never been a recorded case of anaphylaxis in an under 1 year old. Not to say it hasn't happened, but they've never recorded it. So we know that actually giving the foods is usually more beneficial than not. Unless the biological mum or dad has a food allergy, then you might want to consult with a GP or someone before giving, the foods. Okay, so here's what we talked about today. And what I will do is I will stop the recording here,